Werewolf Versus Bigfoot. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got some stories for you about my life, and they all lead up to an actual physical battle that I had with a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It takes a while to get to that part of it, so maybe you should put a thing up on the screen saying when the Bigfoot fight happens. It might not make much sense if you don't listen to the first parts first, but people should have the option if that's the only part they're interested in hearing. I was a werewolf for over 25 years, but when I hit 72 years of age, it seemed to stop happening to me. The transformations, I mean. I think it probably is still trying to happen, but I'm just too old for the condition to fully take over and change me. This allows me to get on government assistance, and I've entered a home. I've been able to get myself a smartphone, and that was how I discovered your channel and other shows like yours. I've been on my feet living both on and off the grid for my entire life, so I admit it feels good to finally kick up my feet and watch comedies and movies again. But every so often I think back on some of the adventures I've had, and I have to admit those times were not all bad. I'm not going to go so far as to say that I would want to have it all come back, because at my age I think the transformation would be too difficult to take. I'm just saying I do have a few cherished memories from back then, one of which I'd like to share with you here. I'm laughing at myself for writing cherished about the story I'm going to tell you, but I won't change it, I'll leave it there. I'm allowed to cherish a memory of ultraviolence if I so choose. After all, it wasn't all perpetrated against me. I got in a few hits on that Bigfoot of my own. But as you get older, you forget how scary it was and how sad, thinking you were about to die. And you only remember the exhilaration of being chased and turning the tables to chase your attacker. The memories are fun because I was lucky enough to survive. But if I think too long on those memories, I start to remember the hardships and the nagging pains. Yes, even a werewolf can suffer from recurring or chronic ailments. They tend to be the result of injuries that would have killed us if we had still been normal humans, though. So it's better than what the alternative might have been. That's one of many trade-offs with the werewolf lifestyle. You have much greater physical abilities, but you need to have them because the lifestyle is so much more rugged and dangerous than almost any kind of human lifestyle might be, other than being in combat, I suppose. So yeah, I was a human being for 46 years before I became a werewolf. I had a boring life. One marriage that lasted 3 years with no children. A job at the post office that paid for my studio apartment and my stereo surround sound system and large screen TV. I played video games after work and I never went out. I was very comfortable living like that, obviously, as I was in my 40s and still living that way. Then one of my coworkers urged me to get out of my comfort zone. He said, if I like staying in, then I should go out. If I was a stick in the mud, then I should go camp in the woods, in a tent, for a week, just to get out of my comfort zone. Well, let me tell you something. If I had remained in my comfort zone, I would never have become a werewolf. If I had stayed in my comfort zone, I wouldn't have gotten canned from the post office and I wouldn't have become homeless. If I had remained in my, well, you get my point, but I could go on all afternoon about how much better my life would have been if I had just kept doing things I enjoyed. Instead, I found myself at Chickamauga Nicollet National Forest, or however you say that, in the cold rain in autumn, shivering and sneezing, and having to walk into the cold dark woods to pee. I heard the wolf howls before I saw the creature. Heck, I was hearing wolf howls when I was still in my tent, but I was too stupid and denatured to understand that the sound meant that I was in danger. To me, it was just a sound you hear in the woods, like you hear cars beeping and sirens in the city. It doesn't mean the cars and sirens are directed personally at you. At least not usually. In my defense, I was carrying bear spray with me. The guy who sold me the camping equipment convinced me to buy the bear spray. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known that bears were dangerous. They looked cute on TV, so what did I know? Gentle Ben used to be one of my favorite shows. So anyway, there I am, la-di-da, unzipping and watering a tree, bored out of my skull, and wishing I was home in my 14th floor man cave. Then whoosh, there's this face, this wolf face, that was also somehow not a wolf face. Well, my pee went all over the place as I grabbed that can of bear spray. Then as I raised it to spray in the wolf face, he kind of swung his face around and bit my wrist. So I fired the bear spray into the creature's neck as he bit me, but it bothered him enough that he released his grip and staggered sideways into a tree. It was then that I saw him. He was up on his hind legs, and he was a wolf, or at least he was wolf-like. He was not wearing clothing, so I took him to be a large animal. I did not think he was a werewolf at first. I watched it roll around in the autumn leaves on the ground, apparently trying to get the bear spray smell off of itself. At least that's what I thought it was doing at the time. I ran back inside my tent and I zipped up, and then every single sound for the rest of the night had me panicking. While running back, I had been concerned about the dog bite I had received. Although the creature had not really sunk in his teeth very deeply, I was anxious to disinfect the bleeding wound, as it was still stinging as I ran back. When I got the first aid kit out in the tent, though, I discovered that I could no longer find the dog bite anywhere. I checked both hands. I rolled my sleeves up, but no matter where I looked, there was no cut to my skin. That was a very strange moment, and a very uncomfortable feeling. I mean, I was glad that I didn't have a wound or an infection, but I felt like I was losing my mind. I saw that creature bite me, and I saw the blood coming from my wound. So where was that wound? Or was it my mind that was really wounded? So I had a horrible time camping and being outside of my comfort zone, and I returned to work grumpier than usual. It was a few weeks until the full moon, and my temper only grew worse during that time. I was unhappy with the entire world. I was agitated. People were complaining to me and about me at my job. The first time I transformed was in my apartment. I had been feeling nauseous, so I went into the bathroom and closed the door, which is a habit I picked up while married that I never grew out of. I would close the door behind me for no reason when I was alone at home, but this time, it turned out to be a lucky thing that I did, because this was the first time I was about to transform into a werewolf. I woke up lying on shards of glass with little cuts all over myself. As I gingerly got myself up off the bathroom floor, I realized that I had been sleeping on tiny, sharp pieces of the bathroom mirror, which had gotten smashed up. The closed bathroom door was damaged, but still held firm. Realizing I must have had some sort of epileptic fit during the night that I had no memory of, I panicked and checked the sink and toilet plumbing. Then I checked myself for any larger cuts or bruises. And for the first time, I saw the werewolf healing ability happening in front of my eyes. I saw little cuts on my hands and arms, healing up fast enough for it to be noticeable to the naked eye. I held my arm up under the light, and all the cuts were healed. I knew I had been bleeding. I could still see little puddles of it on the floor. Grabbing a bit of broken mirror, I drew a line on the back of my left hand. I watched the blood rise up to the surface and spill over. And then I watched it just sort of stop bleeding. I wiped the blood off in time to watch the wound healing itself, closing itself up and then disappearing from view. I rinsed the back of my hand off and I stared closely at it, like I was a mental patient. There was no wound on that hand. I cleaned up the broken bathroom, but my hands were shaking. I must have gone completely insane. I worried that I had become a danger to myself and others. I called my shrink and asked for a special meeting. I actually wanted a phone consultation, but the soonest he could schedule me was later in the afternoon. I agreed to the appointment. I got dressed and I went outside for a walk. I didn't want to stray too far from home, in case I started to feel nauseous again. I hoped my bathroom door would hold me for a second night, but I wasn't really sure it would. I didn't know yet that nausea would never accompany the change ever again. I remember sitting on a bench in a park and listening to the leaves blowing around me in the breeze. I remember looking up and seeing the moon in the afternoon sky to the east, and I became fixated on it. I don't remember what happened next, but I do remember the feeling of running at speeds I could have never imagined running before. I remember the feeling the first time I leaned forward while running and dropped down to all fours, enabling myself to run even faster. It didn't hurt at all to slam my hands down into the hard ground. It felt good to do it. It felt natural. I could now move around upright or down. I was as fast as lightning. I was fearsome. I was top of the food chain. When I woke up the next time, it wasn't morning. It was still dark out, and I was sort of curled into a kind of a fetal position, sleeping just inside a tiny little cave in the woods. I had no idea where I was, and the cave was so tiny that I banged my head hard while getting up and out of there. Don't worry, it didn't take long to heal. I found it harder and harder to be human, and my life started to revolve around the moon. The next time I showed up at my job was the next new moon, and they told me they had fired me days earlier. I wasn't going to be able to live with humans if I could only work 1 week out of the month. But somehow it didn't bother me. I just went and lived like an animal. I just went and became an animal. In retrospect, it's remarkable how little emotion went into my decision on that matter. It was just what was scheduled to happen next. Lose job? Hunt deer in the woods with nothing but your fangs and claws. No big deal. I guess I'm lucky that my survival instincts took over, since feeling bad about what was happening would not have helped me survive that period. Okay, now let's get to the Bigfoot battle, as it will also help me to explain another thing about the werewolfism I suffered with for so long. Up to the point when this happened, I had thought that I became the werewolf based on some obscure phase of the moon, one of those types of reasons. I mean, that is why I transformed most of the time. But one dark overcast day I was out walking through the woods when I accidentally stumbled right into a clearing, being used for sleeping, by a truly smelly Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I had seen one of these things before from a great distance, but this was my first experience getting that wall of bad odor hitting me in the face. It was awake in a second, and I was also smelling the creature's bad breath as I was being bellowed at by the thing, which had a very deep voice. I was instantly shaking all over, and I fell to my knees in fear. It was nearly involuntary the way I dropped. If a scream could kill, that was the scream that would do it. I didn't think I was going to be alive for very much longer. But that was when I began to transform. It was like Bill Bixby. The adrenaline flowing through me was changing me into the werewolf. I could feel the fur growing thick and warm on my back, and I could feel my fangs growing. My strength was multiplying, and my eyesight was noticing that all this was causing the Bigfoot to breathe more quickly. I could hear his heart speed up as well, because my hearing was now far more acute than before. My confidence was through the roof as I leaped toward the huge Sasquatch. I was still half human, but I didn't even care. I just wanted to fight. I wanted to kill or be killed. I didn't care how bad that Bigfoot hurt me. just as long as I got to savage him in return. They invented the term tooth and nail to describe the kind of fight we had. I heard noises come from that Bigfoot that I had never heard in my life. I mean, both in the sense of his savage cries of fury as he belted me with the power of a Mack truck, and in the opposite sense too. When I landed blows, when my feral claws tore into flesh, that Sasquatch moaned in ways that were painful to listen to, unless you were a werewolf, like I was at the time. The more painful the cries, the more enjoyable it is for the predator, and all that adrenaline had definitely made me the apex predator in this situation. The Bigfoot ran and my grin grew wider. I had made the Sasquatch frightened for his own life. The smell of his fear tasted sweet on my tongue, and I literally mean that. I could smell and taste his fear, and it only made me want to scare him further. That was what it was like for me being the werewolf. Winning the fight, chasing off the opponent, that could never be enough. The werewolf, he enjoys crushing his foes. He'd rather go down fighting than let an enemy escape. It seems savage because it is savage. Other predators are eating the wolf's food supply. The more predators he can take out, the more food there is for him. It's incredibly selfish, and it's unwise and foolhardy too. But I wasn't just an ordinary wolf. I was a werewolf. I had no time for sanity. I had no time for logic. I wanted to create fear. I wanted a full belly. And I wanted to know that I had it better than any of my enemies. You know, werewolves are not socialists. Werewolves are monarchists. And so this king wolf ran the Bigfoot off deeper into the woods, and he made this sound that was halfway between a baby crying and a woman being knifed to death. It was a horrible, gut-wrenching and ear-splitting sound, but it made the werewolf in me so happy. I felt like I was about to catch up to the Bigfoot, was about to leap onto its back from behind, was about to tear its throat open and drink its blood. When the two of us found ourselves in the smelliest clearing on the surface of the earth, filled with what must have been 17 or 18 Sasquatches. They all looked at me. I looked back at all of them. And then I sort of moonwalked back into the tree cover, and none of them moved. They all kept staring in my direction, though. So I moonwalked backward a little more. Then I turned and ran at full werewolf speed. None of them pursued me. With my hearing, I would have known. So, I don't know. Did I win that fight or did the Bigfoot? Depends on how you look at it. We both lived to fight another day. So I guess there were no real losers on that night. It feels good to be able to find humor in these old memories. Trust me, they were not things I was laughing about when they were happening. My life was deadly dark and serious in those days, except for when I could open up my werewolf engine and really run at full speed, taking down animals my size or larger as they ran full speed too. Well, that also brought me great feral joy. But there was very little time to reflect on old stories and laugh about them back then. It's not something too many animals other than humans ever do. Thank you for letting me share my old stories. And good luck to each of you listening to this. Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America. A lot of the stories we run on this channel are supposed to be true, but it's not like I have budget or time to look into any of the claims made. Someone who made her living looking into Dogman claims, though, was the late great Linda Godfrey. If you like the stories on this show, then you should check out this incredible audiobook from Linda called Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America. Linda goes back to the 1930s and tells a number of the better researched Dogman and werewolf stories of the 20th and 21st centuries. It's a great overview of the subject matter, whether you're new to it or even if you think you know all the stories. It's available in audiobook, audio CD, paperback, or Kindle forms at the address in the description for this video. The audiobook is over 8 hours and is probably the best deal there. Plus, if you use the link in the description, supposedly you're helping us out here in some way that I'm still learning about. And now here's your old pal Bigfoot with an important message about today's executive producer. No matter how far the Dogman wanders, he'll never find a better EP than Sean Saunders. Please join me in thanking tonight's executive producer, Sean Saunders, for making this episode possible. Sean is a top-tier member of our PayPal subscribers club, which you can join at peterbernard.com. That means Sean gets a number of perks, including getting to see our weekly secret uncensored Dogman or werewolf stories that we would never be allowed to run on this channel, or stories that the contributor specifically requested that we only share with our superfans. This week our secret uncensored story is going to come out on Tuesday because that's Halloween, but normally it's a Sunday thing. Oh, don't forget that Monday this week, October 30th, we have an all-new story from PQ River in honor of Halloween. Here to explain how you can see our secret stories is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/peterbernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.